I think you're muted.
Am I muted? I don't know that.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we
Well,
missed all
welcome
that.
to the Deconstructing Data podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, and I was welcoming in DW. Thank you for that. Usually it automatically unmutes you when the video goes off.
Oh, well, we're human.
We're human and technology, but it was probably me. But anyway, how are you today, DW?
Very good. It's always fun to be on this podcast.
Yeah. And as I was mentioning pre-show, our fans on TikTok love when DW shows up. So I'm excited to have you back. So thanks for being here.
Yes, I'll have to add some dance moves, I guess, for TikTok, to make it happen. Yeah.
No, I think you just need to remain your own authentic self, DW, and just keep talking all of the data details that you like to share here on Deconstructing Data, because it shines. So, and we're lucky. We've got a really interesting guest today. This week, we're in for a real treat. We've got Bob Audet, who is a highly acclaimed partner and data management leader at Guidehouse, with a wealth of experience in advising top executives in driving transformational change across industries. He is a strategic thinker and expert in delivering high-quality results with a focus on helping organizations extract value from their data assets and establish effective data management capabilities. Bob is actively involved in leading data-related efforts across the federal government and has spoken at MIT CDO Symposium on the federal data strategy and the Open Government Data Act. So today, Deconstructing Data listeners, we get to hear from him ourselves here. Let's go ahead and welcome him in. Welcome to the show, Bob. Well, thank you for being here.
Well, Jessie, David, thank you for the warm introduction, and definitely excited to participate in this podcast.
Absolutely. Well, if you don't mind, and it's a pleasure to meet you and have you on too, but if you don't mind, could you please kick us off by telling us your story and what led you to Guidehouse and also what problems you help solve there?
Yeah, honestly, I have been doing management consulting for pretty much my entire career. And one of the common threads across my entire career has really been about data and how organizations can better manage data as an asset. And, for quite some time now, I've been working closely with chief data officers and data leaders across pretty much most industry segments, public sector, commercial, and doing exactly that, defining data strategies for organizations to help them navigate through the complex morass of data that they have to enable better decision making, both strategic and operational, to better govern that data, to ensure that it's trusted, it's visible, it's usable, and helping organizations modernize some of their legacy data capabilities to meet the speed and sophistication with which business data consumers want to consume data. So a little bit about my background, but yeah. Jessie, you're back on mute.
You're back on mute somehow.
Thank you for that. And thanks for sharing. And if there is anybody listening, we would love to hear from you in the comments. So let's just preface with that. As we get this conversation kicked off, if you hear anything that strikes you as interesting, let us know. We would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, please plug those in. But let's get kicked off with our first question. How can data leaders effectively enable timely access to trusted data in a distributed data architecture using data mesh and data fabric approaches? We're going to let you kick this one off, Bob.
No, this is a good question. And I think, honestly, there's been a lot of buzz in the industry around these two terms. And I think to kind of answer this question, you have to sort of start with understanding, as a data leader, what are the challenges within your organization, and even assessing whether a data mesh and data fabric architectural approaches are actually good for your organization. In short, especially larger organizations with more complex legacy architectures, where there's existing data silos, or there's data scalability issues, or integration challenges across the organization, across numerous different data sources, or where data consumers or data curators can actually get access to the data that they need to produce some analytical model, some type of report, and staying ahead of with evolving business needs in the competitive landscape, or staying ahead of the mission for more public sector types of organizations. Being able, organizations that can't stay up with those information needs, these, in my opinion, are some of the types of indicators that might lead organizations to think about that the data mesh or data fabric approaches could work for the organization. Now, assuming some of these indicators exist, I think there are some key considerations that CDOs have in terms of options and data leaders have to address these. Now, one might think that, okay, well, industry has often gone to sort of this like centralized data management architecture. While this architecture works in certain instances, there are some challenges with that approach. And I think some of these, the proliferation of different complex ETL processes, or some more shadow IT, or bottlenecks with data agility, or slow reaction to new or changes in data sources, not being able to scale to the sheer number of data sources that exist, incomplete inventories or catalogs, or even having resistance from department level data stewards in providing information about data assets. A lot of these things become friction, and this type of approach can become what I like to call data friction, and inhibiting the speed with which an organization can satisfy some of the information needs. And it also introduces data quality challenges as well. So, and if you think about it, these challenges honestly contradict many of the things that organizations want: greater scalability, greater data agility, better data quality, greater data observability, faster access to the data that people need, and better data interoperability. So when you think about those things, and we look at data mesh and data fabric and those approaches, there are some similarities to data virtualization and data as a service. And these really allow a more scalable, more flexible way for large organizations to gain access to authoritative data sources that are oftentimes federated across these really complex legacy architectures. And, data mesh, just so we can kind of baseline people's understanding, this is really more of a domain-driven architectural pattern that really focuses on aligning data ownership, product ownership, and the decision-making around those and how those domains are governed, really at that domain data product level versus in some centralized type of fashion. And then the fabric is more of an infrastructure type of approach that provides that seamless access layer across an organization. And some of the benefits of both of these sort of distributed domain-centered approaches is it definitely allows these more domain-centric ownership of the data, the pipelines, the quality. If you think about it, the individuals that manage and curate this data on a daily basis in some business functional area, they have the business knowledge of the data. They understand the data quality issues. They understand some of the integration challenges and nuances of the data far better than potentially a data engineer that is sitting in a centralized organization without that tacit knowledge. So really that you get faster reaction to changes and also to addressing data quality issues. It allows sort of at the domain level for new requirements to be incorporated faster and to be able to scale faster to address new data consumer demands. The other thing is it provides sort of that more unified environment to enable applying master reference data standards more effectively as well. There's a host of other types of benefits of this type of approach. Now, I think the question though that I see that in a lot of the literature that I've read as well is like, great, good benefits. The question is, as a leader, how do you get started? what are some of the key capabilities that you need and successful practices that should be put in place when in order to successfully implement data mesh and data fabric. So
is it safe to say that doing this, you're actually like enabling at least some sort of level of self-serve in the organization?
I do believe that this does enable an organization. It provides sort of, in my opinion, some of the fundamental building blocks to enable better self-service. Now, granted, you still need the upstream analytics and reporting capabilities and access to the appropriate tools that can consume the data that in that distributed architecture. But I believe they certainly are instrumental building blocks to help enable self-service analytics, and especially in large distributed organizations.
I would imagine in a large organization that there's a lot of concern about data privacy or liability, I guess. How would the data mesh handle who can see what when, basically?
Sure,
Basic
that's
question.
a great question. I mean, part of some of the there's really kind of two components, and part of this is the overarching kind of data policies that are done ideally collaboratively with the CIO, the CISO, and the CDO really become the overarching guidelines that need to be applied at the local level. And providing that sort of centralized capabilities to be able to manage access, such as role-based access control for more zero trust type of architectures. It can be applied a lot more uniformly across the discovery layer of the data fabric. And it also provides that unified environment for more attribute-based access controls to some of the types of data and data products that people should have access to. So I do think there's the overarching, just to kind of summarize, I think there's overarching, more enterprise type of capabilities to manage that access, and also the policies to kind of provide the guardrails to secure that data in the most effective way. And it then allows for that to be better secured at the local level.
So I guess you would have in each domain you would have the local controls, as it were, in the course of doing their normal business. But then and the overarching part of it, then you would also have additional controls. Is that accurate? I hope I said that right.
I think that's accurate.
Very cool. Very interesting.
Absolutely.
I see you looking there. Is it time for the next question?
Yeah, we're 15 minutes in, so I'm just gonna hop us into the next question if you don't mind. And it all flows along, but what are some of the key data management capabilities that must be in place before embarking on the data fabric, data mesh journey?
Yeah, and this one I think is because I've actually had some conversations with individuals as well in the industry that have embarked on this journey of deploying data mesh and data fabric architectural approaches, and I think there are a few foundational things that are actually very instrumental to this. So one of them is about this unified data catalog and having effectively defined and curated metadata. That centralized view of the inventory of data assets really enables better discovery for different teams and understandability of the data. It can improve data quality and promote better collaboration across the different stakeholders that are often involved in either managing or using that data. Data domains is another thing. Oftentimes we walk into organizations that don't have a firm grasp of what are the actual data domains that really make up and support their core business. So it's really important, especially as we talk about data mesh, in trying to align data ownership to business domains, because it promotes more independent evolution of data products. It breaks down some of the data silos. Data fabric architectural approach, the importance of data domains is that it really provides more of a logical way in which you will sort of chip away at building out the fabric and really trying to focus on which data domains have the most business criticality to them, and starting with some of those. So this whole point of like, know what your data domains are and effectively manage them. And that becomes that key pillar to organize the mesh. Data orchestration. We really need a way to effectively manage the flow and usage of data across the fabric, provide consistency, accuracy, and data that's up to date. Really a key piece for the data fabric. And another one that in a recent conversation I had with the CIO is this notion of like data quality, health, transparency. And as we think about data that is being governed at a more local and more of a distributed fashion, just think of it as an example of if you were to go shopping at some type of store for a product, but that product really was either the service was not good or the quality of the product was poor, likely you're not going to go back and shop at that store again for that same product. And in a similar fashion, when we think about a more data product, data domain focused approach, it's super important for organizations to be able to show what the quality is of that data. And as one instance I talked about, this organization, they really organized some of their domains both around region and also by specific domains. And they started to see data quality issues that were arising within specific those domains. It really allowed the data to be improved. And I think it also helped to instill this zeal within the organization and for these different domains to effectively manage the data. There was almost this like competitive spirit that started to emerge across the different domain owners, if you will. But the transparency is key. And because of this, their data quality improved by 50%. They automated many data processes so that employees actually had more time for value-added activities related to data. They had more than 85 different data quality checks. Really, the quality of their data has actually moved towards almost like 97% in terms of accuracy and a lot of different key critical data elements. So now this last piece, and then I'll hand it over for some follow-up questions, is that this transparency around data quality is not without its challenges, because when you start to move toward this localized governing approach, there can be egos that get in the way, or there can be fear of exposing, my gosh, the data for the marketing department and our view of customers is just really bad and doesn't enable cross-selling effectively. And so it's really important for leaders to be able to foster a healthy internal competition across the domains, not blaming people for issues or data quality issues, trying to instill this culture of no fear of data quality issues and promoting really transparency. It's really key to making this work. So I think in summary, these things, unified data catalog and properly managed metadata, and making sure that it's comprehensive enough as well. Because oftentimes we do see within organizations that the inventory and the catalog and the associated metadata, it's partially representing what the data assets are in an organization.
And would you say it's sort of about building a data culture too? Because it sort of sounded like at the end, it's, there's a lot of it that just goes into education and transparency. And yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think, Jesse, you're spot on. I think in the interview that I had with the specific data leader in organization, it was clear that for that organization, there was top-down championing of leadership, and they clearly understood that data was valued to supporting their strategic objectives and mission. And, I think that helped to sort of create that culture that's absolutely necessary to make some of these sort of paradigm shifts in how we kind of govern and manage data is super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, your comment about the transparency about the quality of it resonates with me, because I've been in the situations where after all this effort to expose data, you end up with some issue, and then it undermines the confidence people have in what you're actually presenting. And so even when it's right, they'll always be like, yeah, but remember that one time you were wrong, you know, and let's use that again, you know? But it does go to data culture. If there might be fear, I think, you know, because it might reflect poorly on job performance if the true numbers get out, you know. So
Sure.
but if the managers, you know, allay that fear and just want to find out the truth, and no one gets punished for it, then it'll work. So
yeah,
very interesting.
And this is David, where, and Jesse, this, and for the audience as well. I mean, this is also where the importance is, as you think about cascading down some of these governing and management responsibilities to other parts of an organization, the ensuring that the individuals that are in these roles, number one, leaders within those functional areas need to make sure they have enough of the right skilled people in order to do this. Data literacy becomes really important. People need to be equipped with the right sets of skills to understand, well, what does it mean to actually govern a data product? What are my roles and responsibilities? And things that leaders grapple with at this stage as well is it another duty as assigned, which oftentimes leads to it becoming deprioritized? Or do you actually need to have more full-time type of resources to actually manage and curate the data products and domains as they should? How do you incentivize people through their annual objectives? Like, there's a whole lot for people to think about when really cascading this down to people who are actually in the trenches managing some of these that are part of the mesh, managing domains and the associated products.
So you have people in the trenches. That also resonates with me. I used to work in manufacturing, so I have a question. So today, there's a ton of data out there. There's terabytes of data being stored, you know, added to assiduously by multiple processes. You as a consultant walk in and say, I'm going to help you with this. How do you decide what to do first, or even what's important? The people in the trenches might think every bit of data they have is important, but they may not see the big picture. You know?
Sure.
How do you go about choosing?
Yeah, as a data guy, you might think I would say, well, let's start with the data, which, and what I think is actually more important as leaders within, you know, different parts of the business is understanding, and especially many CDOs that I've spoken with in the industry, they're really the data glue that really connects connects different types of stakeholders from across the organization that have a keen understanding of what are the business information needs and which ones are most important. Where are the greatest capability gaps with respect to those information needs? And I find that organizations that focus more on what type of information is going to fuel the mission and the strategic objectives, it goes a lot farther than just data for data's sake.
That's exactly what I was asking about. I like the words you use: fuel the mission and the company's objectives, basically, right? So you're connecting the dots between providing value as a company and the data that it takes to actually know that you're doing this or not, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And David, to bring it full circle to this whole conversation, you know, while this sort of emergent architectural patterns of mesh and fabric sound great, what's most important, in my opinion, is you at the onset, is understanding and identifying what are those and attaching this to specific high value use cases where there's criticality to the business associated with that data. Absent of doing that, I'm not sure it's worth it. So it does right up front need to be linked to key use cases and ensuring that there's a strategic approach that guides the journey of establishing these capabilities, because it's going to be a journey. I mean, if you think about all of those capabilities that I noted a few moments ago, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. They cannot all be put in place at the same time. So having that strategy, having that roadmap is important. Having that business case and using that initial use case as a way to highlight the value and build credibility and momentum to further help fuel investments in this type of journey is the example I talked about of the individual that I had recently interviewed around this. It's taken them multiple years. They're still on a journey. It's going well, but it takes time.
Mm. Yes.
Yep.
And on that note, I'm going to switch gears now a little bit onto our, I mean, I guess we're still on the same, wavelength here, but on our third question, what are some of the, I'll pull it up here, some of the other notable success factors when approaching data mesh and data fabric?
Yeah, I think I just touched upon the
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, you did.
It's the use case driven approach, and then scaling from there to demonstrate success. But I think the other part, like change management, I think is really important. And similar to introducing any other type of new change, as this is, you need to make sure that the impacted stakeholders are number one, they understand why we're making this paradigm shift. And being able to sell this approach to different sets of people at different levels of the organization. People need to be trained on the usages of new tools and of new skill sets that we're going to ask for them. And it definitely requires leadership to be really helping to champion this and sort of helping to build that data-driven culture. And one of the best practices that I heard in one of my recent interview was building localized communities of practice that are focused, that where the data domain owners and those that are participating in the data mesh can get together to talk about best practices. What can we do? Like, what are the things that are working well in terms of being able to manage data at a more localized and a more distributed fashion?
Absolutely. No, that's great.
So as an example of that, like if you're in manufacturing and you have, let's say, 10 plants, and each plant's treated as a domain, you might have people dedicated to the managing the data of each of those domains, and these guys would get together maybe once a quarter to compare notes. Is that like a similar thing that you're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
What would be a marketing example?
Yeah, marketing one's an interesting one because a lot of times, at least what I've seen in different industries, the biggest issue is around having that 360-degree view of a customer. And this is an interesting case of a domain that can really cut across multiple functions of an organization. And so this domain may end up needing to be treated as more of a centrally more managed master domain, if you will, that involves the participation of relevant stakeholders across different functional areas of an organization. But this is one where I think there's tends to be tons of issues because it creates being able to cross-sell to customers. It makes it challenging, or customers getting duplicative mailings and marketing campaigns on things, or an organization not even knowing what products, like one part of an organization knowing what products a customer has versus another. So this would be sort of like, in my opinion, like the core, one of the key marketing challenges that I think many organizations are grappling with. And I think this type of approach we've been talking about, I think, can help to put the right focus on trying to solve that.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just really quick, so about the 360-degree view of the customer, and really like maybe a centralized repository of data would be more appropriate for it. It occurs to me that the distributed approach and a centralized approach don't necessarily exclude each other, because if you're actually getting customer information from your other domains, you end up being in centralizing that into a 360 view of the customer. Is that possible?
Yeah, there are definitely sort of hybrid type of models where There are some domains that that can more clearly be managed in a more distributed fashion, where there are others that are just so fundamental that cut across so many aspects of a business's value chain that it's important to apply the right entity resolution and master data management principles to create that sort of golden domain, if you will. And so you can have these approaches where there are some aspects of those domains that are more centralized and others that are more distributed. And that's where the strategy that I talked about and knowing what the domains are and defining the right strategic approach of how you're going to set up the domains is really important.
Cyril.
I'm frantically making notes here. That's my
I
wife looking over
noticed.
here.
Yeah, it is good information and great for the audience too. I'm sure they're doing the same, and they can also, click rewind and listen to it again if they really want to. But I'm going to move us into one of our topics that we have every week. We ask all of our guests this same topic, and we like to know, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack? And we hear all sorts of things from email to data management providers. So we would love to hear from you. What are 2 or 3 to 5 of your favorite your favorite tools, and we'll tag them in the comments.
Yeah, and I think the thing you'll need to understand a little bit about the type of work that I do, and this is really for the audience, is we advise clients to solve their complex data issues. So Guidehouse in itself, we take a more technology agnostic approach, which allows us to recommend and deploy the best fit solution to our clients, depending on their environment, the approved tools that they have, or the investments that they can make. So, we're constantly trying to help organizations around the globe tackle the complex issues, and their environments are always different, or one might be AWS and one might be Azure, or one is still on-prem and using a certain tech stack, and that's what the enterprise architecture standards have approved. So, but I would say some of the emergent tools, and some of them not even so much emergent, but ones that I feel are well positioned to address some of the types of things that we've talked about on this call. There's Snowflake, Denodo, TIBCO would be some of the 3 that I would highlight that are ones that individuals should look at and sort of contemplate and think about as they're evaluating options if a data fabric approach is right for their organization.
Those are all great ones. We've heard those before. Well, we've heard Snowflake before, I know. Denodo, I'm not sure we've heard that one before. And I'm looking to tag them. Maybe I'm not spelling it correctly. Can you spell that for me?
Yeah, sure. I'll put it Denodo.
Denodo.
Oh, okay.
Looks like they have a orange and black logo. I'll go ahead and give them a tag for all of our viewers.
Yeah, I've had some positive interactions and sort of in my involvement with the MIT CDO Symposium, actually sort of seeing some of the capabilities that they have, and been honestly quite impressed with, I think, some of their perspective and viewpoint on some of the topics we've talked about today.
Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing that. And we do still have 10 minutes, so we don't often get time to get to our post-topic questions, but I'm excited to be able to get to ask you maybe a few of them. So sure. Bob, I'm sort of curious just to learn more about you as a person too, and so if you could go back to when you first came into the industry, what would be the number one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I would say there was a certain point in my, and I can remember this lunch quite clearly in my mind, but one of the common threads throughout my entire career has been data. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've always been focused on projects that relate to data. I've done strategy, corporate strategy work. I've done IT governance work, IT PMO, IT portfolio management, enterprise architecture. I mean, I could I could go on the sort of the range of different types of things I've done in my career. But the one thread that has carried through has been data. And honestly, it wasn't until maybe 4 years ago when I had a little bit of a wake-up call over lunch with someone, another partner at Guidehouse, that basically kind of, put the crossroads question in front of me. And the question was really about, do you kind of go after your passion, or do you sort of take the risk of being more focused in a specific market segment? And for me, I decided to take the risk of really doing, and it sounds a little cliche, but it was really about going after what I really enjoyed and what I really enjoy, which is helping organizations solve complex data problems. So as I recruit individuals, as I've tried to build my team, I've constantly been looking for people that share that same passion and interest, that really understand complex data issues, but also individuals that really know how to advise clients in navigating through complex issues. So that's, I think, one of the things I would say in summary is, as you kind of think about in your career, when you have this sort of dilemma of whether you kind of focus on what you really love and are passionate about or something else, I would try to lean more towards taking the risk and focus on what you really enjoy and enjoy doing and can have an impact in.
That's really great. And I love how you pick data. And I thought that you said something earlier that was pretty profound. I can't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, when you were talking about data culture, you said, you loved data and you prioritize data above all, but data can't solve everything. And that's where, some of the people connections and the culture things come in.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting that you choose data, but then you still are able to, put it in that spot to know that, data, it only does so much for us. We still have to do a lot of work to make the data work.
Yeah. I mean, it all starts with an individual, possibly a call center agent, that's trying to take your phone call about your mortgage, and, do they enter in the data properly? So this sort of like this culture of data even starts with individuals that almost at line levels in organizations, and thinking about the ripple effect of potentially a miskey of information at that level. Like I've seen use cases where someone miskeyed tax information, the evaluation of a home, and they ended up with $100,000 tax bill. So there's it really does. I think this notion of data, it starts even at that level, but it requires the right culture, it requires the right controls, it requires the right processes, the right standards, and it's not just a technology problem. It requires training. It requires people to understand the impacts of why data is important to an organization. And it applies to this whole topic that we've been talking about, distributed architectures, and especially managing and governing data products and domains. Individuals need to understand that the data products that they produce are going to be consumed by other parts of the organization. They are going to rely upon those to make decisions. And so it becomes really important that that they have the right skills. They understand the value of it. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question.
It's a great question. I'm sorry. It's a great answer. It's a great answer.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
it is a good question though too. But go ahead, DW.
Yes. As you were speaking, the question came up in my mind. Is data a means or an end?
I think it's a means. It's not the end. I think, Some organizations might disagree with that, where their sole business is to, collect data, curate that data in some fashion, like a credit bureau, and then be able to then resell that data to numerous different organizations. So it's a little bit of a yes and no. I think part of it ultimately depends on what business are you in. I would say most businesses aren't going to say, or federal agencies I talk to say, well, we're in the business of data. No, we're in the business of like protecting the country, or protecting our borders. That's our mission. Data helps us achieve that mission. And I think there are many banks that I've worked with as well. Like, yeah, data is key to be able to manage risk and how you extend credit or you don't, or how you cross-sell to customers to offer them different products. Their business isn't data per se. But there are some companies that, data is their business.
I would venture to say, though, even in those cases, their product is a means for other people to do their job.
Sure. Fair point. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yep. And we're seeing a lot of this with like third-party data brokers that are basically curating various different data sets or open data sets and repackaging those and selling them off to different organizations. And to your point, yes, they are using those and integrating them in with their internal data sets. So yeah, David, you're spot on.
Yep. Well, this was a really great discussion, Bob. I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Well, yeah. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the questions. I hope for those that have attended in the audience, hopefully you've gleaned some insights from this. And if you didn't, you can always watch it on another time.
Exactly, because it does live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, so you can find it anywhere.
Great.
If someone wanted to reach out to you and ask you, find out more, or talk to you, how would they do that?
They can certainly find my information on LinkedIn. They can always try to connect with me or message me, or they can find my information and contact information on our Guidehouse website. You can definitely find my name on the Guidehouse website for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And DW, have you shared your contact information? So the folks on TikTok might want to be reaching out to you if they wanted to.
I'm on LinkedIn as well. My name is not that common, as common as it might sound, but yeah, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. So.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. And in closing, if you enjoy the Deconstructing Data podcast, we hope that you will maybe consider checking out BDEX.com and looking at Omni IQ. This is our app where you can upload a list of your first-party data and get complimentary analytics on it. And if you like that, you can upgrade to find more. Let me put a QR code on here to make this easier for any of our viewers. If you scan this QR code, it'll take you right to Omni IQ. We would love to have you check that out. But we'd also love to hear from our listeners. You can reach us at info@bdex.com if you have any suggestions of anyone you would like to have on the show, or if you have any suggestions of what you would like to hear us talk about. Share your qualitative data with us so that we can make this show best for you. Thank you all for being here. And until next week, we will see you next time.